This is the pineapple in the JonBenet Ramsey case explained. After posting a 3-part series about what I think happened to JonBenet Ramsey, I got like a billion comments just like this. With all the crazy details in that case, I believe that my theory is the only one that can explain all of them, but the pineapple thing. And since a lot of comments did not know about the pineapple, I figured I would just get on here and quickly explain it. The Ramsey family was at a holiday party the night before JonBenet was unalived. Timeline given by family says that she fell asleep in the car on the way home from the party. They put her up to bed and she never woke up. The next morning, they found the ransom note and their daughter missing, and then a few hours later, she was found in the basement of the home. The only thing found in her stomach was a chunk of undigested pineapple. No pineapple was served at the holiday party, and anything she had eaten there had already been digested. At the Ramsey home, a bowl of pineapple and milk was found on their counter, which was a very common snack in their household. On the bowl were the fingerprints of both JonBenet's mother and brother. This detail is very important because it directly goes against the timeline given by family that she had been asleep since the holiday party. The family also claims that they did not put out the pineapple in the first place. I've been asked to talk about this so much because it's like the one detail my theory can't explain. Despite what theory anyone believes, I feel like we can all agree that the theory that was brought forth by her family does not make any sense and is not an accurate representation of what happened that night. I think I want to make a video going over what the timeline would look like if an intruder was responsible, because the intruder would have had to be in this home undetected for like literally hours. If that's something anyone will be interested in seeing, let me know in the comments, as well as any other questions or details you'd want me to cover next.
This is the exact moment the 18-year-old Samantha Koenig was abducted from a coffee stand in Alaska. At around 8 p.m. on February 1st, 2012, Samantha was kidnapped from the Common Grounds coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska by serial killer Israel Keys. She had been working alone when security footage showed her being approached by Israel, who walked up to the window, pointed a gun at her, and demanded that she turn off the lights. He then bound her hands together, jumped through the window, stuffed napkins into her mouth, and forced her into his truck before taking her back to his house where he lived with his girlfriend and 10-year-old daughter. Once at home, he tied her up in a shed in his backyard, went inside to make sure his family was asleep, and then went back out to the shed where he sexually assaulted and strangled Samantha to death. Israel then left her body in the shed and proceeded to go on a 2-week-long cruise with his family. Samantha was reported missing the next day, and the FBI quickly got involved, but unfortunately it was too late. When Israel returned home from the cruise, he decided to take a ransom photo of Samantha in order to receive money from her parents. He promised that she'd be unharmed if they sent him money. But in order to provide proof of life, he needed to make it look like she was still alive, so he proceeded to braid her hair and do her makeup, and he even went as far as sewing her eyelids open with fishing line. But in all reality, she had already been deceased for 2 weeks. On February 24th, Israel texted Samantha's boyfriend using her phone and told him to look for a package in a local park, and it was then that the Anchorage police found the ransom photo and the note demanding $30,000. And just wanting their daughter back safely, Samantha's parents paid him the money by depositing it into her bank account that was linked to her debit card, which he had stolen from her. Sadly, Samantha would not be returned to her family, as Israel then dismembered her body and disposed of her remains in Matanuska Lake. Shortly after, he started using her debit card, which alerted authorities right away. He would disguise himself while withdrawing the money, but one ATM security camera caught him driving away in a white Ford Focus, and it was because of this that he would soon be caught. On March 13, 2012, a Texas state trooper located the car in question and started following him until he was speeding, at which point he pulled him over. Inside the car was Israel, and authorities then found Samantha's debit card and cell phone. Once arrested, Israel confessed to Samantha's murder, but he also confessed to much more. He claimed to have started killing people in 1998, and by the time he kidnapped Samantha, he claimed to have also killed 10 other people in multiple states. While incarcerated, Israel took his life by attempted strangulation and using a razor blade. Before he died, he drew 11 skulls in his own blood and wrote, quote, "We are one," end quote.
So you like anything creepy, but have you heard of the urban legend of Carmen Winstead? 17-year-old Carmen Winstead was in high school. Her dad had lost his job, so they had to relocate to Indiana so he could get a new job. Carmen was finding it very difficult to leave her friends behind and make new ones, and because of her fear of criticism, it was very hard to do that. The first 2 semesters of her new school were very challenging, but things started to turn around when she became friends with a group of 5 girls. These girls appeared to be nice, but Carmen found out that they were gossiping and spreading false information about her. One of those rumors was that Carmen was having an affair with the school's janitor. Another one of those rumors was that she would wipe her snot on people when they weren't looking, and there were many more rumors that just ruined her reputation at that school.
These girls started calling Carmen derogatory names, breaking into her locker and stealing her items. It had gotten to the point that Carmen was fed up with the bullying, so she was going to stay after school to talk to the teachers about it. That same day, there was a fire drill right after lunch, and as everyone was waiting for roll call from their teachers, Carmen was spotted near a sewer opening with those 5 girls. Those 5 girls had a plan to push Carmen down that sewer opening, and it would be so embarrassing for her and the whole school would laugh. Those girls swarmed her, pushed her, and shoved her into the sewer opening. One of the girls yelled, "She's in the sewer," giggling, and the teacher went to go check on Carmen, and when she saw Carmen, she was standing still and her head was turned to one side. The police were called, and once they arrived, they saw that Carmen had scraped her whole face off when she went down and her neck was broken. All of the students had to stay behind and be interrogated, and the 5 girls claimed that Carmen had just fell down on her own, and because of this, the case was closed and classified as an accident. A few months later, strange posts from an identified person started appearing on the Facebook of the students that went to Carmen's school, and it stated that her death was not an accident and she was pushed. That unidentified person left a window of opportunity for the people involved to come forward and to turn themselves in, and if they didn't, they would face the consequences. No one came forward, and those 5 girls were found dead one by one. As a ghost, Carmen would send chain mail, and if those people that received it didn't send it to 15 people, then she would kill them. According to the legend, Carmen will get them whether it's a toilet, shower, sink, or a drain. When those people would wake up, they would be in a sewer, paralyzed and terrified, hearing laughter all over the place, and then Carmen would tear their face off. Whoever would obey Carmen's demands, she would look after and protect them for the rest of their lives.
She was selling her newborn daughter to men for $400. Morgan Strapp allegedly used her Snapchat account to send 3 different photos of her 7-month-old daughter to a man. Morgan also sent a message to that man saying, "You can F her for $400. Half now, rest after. I'll send you my address. I do live alone, and her dad is not in the picture." Morgan sent over 7,000 messages to different people in just a 3-day span. Morgan added over 400 Snapchat accounts and sent a repetitive message 81 times asking, "Would you be interested in buying my explicit photos so I can get baby diapers?" Thankfully, Snapchat's safety systems flagged Morgan's account and reported the data to law enforcement. FBI agents got involved before anything happened to the baby, so the baby is safe and out of Morgan's custody. Morgan had 6 other children who were also removed from her custody. Morgan has not been sentenced yet because her trial is still ongoing. I'm really hoping that Morgan hasn't done anything like this in the past with her 6 other children. I'm so relieved that the children are out of her custody and that they are now safe. But what do you guys think about this case?
Tell me you guys remember seeing videos or pictures of this girl on social media, TikTok specifically, of when her trial was going on. I remember she was all over my For You page and people were, I don't want to say romanticizing her, but like the comments were definitely weird. I don't know what this whole thing is about romanticizing criminals. It's weird because why are we doing that? Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Isabella Guzman. She was 18 years old when she ended her mother's life in the most brutal way possible. Isabella lived in Colorado with her mother and her stepdad. I couldn't find all that much on her background. Growing up, she was a bit of a troublemaker. Actually, a lot of a troublemaker. Her behavior issues started when she was young. I mean, as young as 6 years old. She lived with both of her biological parents until they got divorced. Although her parents did keep a very amicable relationship, they got along, but one of their biggest challenges, for lack of a better word, was handling Isabella's behavior. After the divorce, she lived with her mom, but her behavior was so out of order that she was sent to go live with her dad, but that wasn't working either, so she was sent to go back to live with her mother. She went back and forth for the sole reason that neither parent could handle her behavior. Isabella was just mean. She was very disrespectful to her parents. She looked down specifically on her mother. She resented her almost for a number of reasons, for not making enough money, for not buying her materialistic things. She resented her almost for not giving her the life that I guess Isabella thought that she deserved. And I'm sure there is some trauma there, right? Of course, it's not like Isabella came out of the womb with this angry attitude, but she did give off an energy that she was just angry at the world. The older she got, the worse her behavior got. She would break all and any rules her parents had. She would sneak in boys into the house all the time. She ended up dropping
dropping out of high school, which only made her relationship with her parents worse. Her mom remarried, and Isabella saw that as just another reason to be angry at her. She was so cold with the stepdad, she didn't even give him a chance to get to know him. With all that being said, I will say there are two sides of every story as far as Isabella's childhood and teenage years go. Her mom's side, her dad's side, friends of the family all viewed Isabella the same way, as a troubled, violent, aggressive, angry girl. Isabella's mother was honestly scared of her because she feared that one day her own daughter would let her anger take over her and do something really harmful to someone. She didn't feel safe with her own child, to the point that she once called the police because Isabella was getting so aggressive and threatening her. But Isabella's side of the story is that she suffered a lot at the hands of her parents, both emotionally and physically. She said that she was mistreated by her parents. I will let you decide what you want to believe. In August of 2013, Isabella's mother was feeling defeated. She didn't know what else she could try and do to help Isabella. She gave it her all, but nothing was working. The mom called Isabella's biological father and asked him to come over and talk some sense into Isabella. So that's what he did. He came over. Him and Isabella sit outside for a while, having a deep conversation about her behavior. The dad tells her that something needs to change. They cannot keep living in fear of their own daughter. That is no way to live. In constant fear or worry, no one should have to live that way. He tells her she needs to be better. She needs to clean up her act, or she needs to move out. Before her mom kicked her out, she was 18 years old now. She was legally an adult, and she needed to start respecting her mother or go live on her own and do whatever it is she wanted to do. The father left that conversation thinking that it was great. He thought that Isabella was really listening to him and taking everything that he was saying seriously, realizing that she did need to change, but he could not have been more mistaken. That same night at home was Isabella, her mom, and her stepdad. The stepdad was downstairs. The mom was getting into the shower upstairs, and Isabella was in her room. Not long after the stepdad heard the shower turn on, he heard a thud and a lot of commotion coming from the bathroom upstairs. The mom started screaming, and the stepdad ran up the stairs to see what was going on, but all he saw was Isabella slamming the door shut, locking her and her mom inside of that bathroom. The mom was screaming for help. She was yelling at the top of her lungs, clearly in pain, clearly distraught, calling for the stepdad to come and help her. Isabella had locked herself in that bathroom with her mom with a very sharp kitchen weapon, and she started attacking her mom over and over and over again, taking the weapon to her mother's face and her mother's neck a total of 79 times. In a panic, the stepdad rushed downstairs to grab his phone and call 911. He tells them exactly what's going on. He tells them that he sees blood pouring out from underneath the bathroom door, and then silence. All of the yelling and all of the screaming stopped, and it was almost as if the stepdad could hear his wife behind that door taking her last breath. The door swung open. Isabella stood there covered in blood, holding the weapon in hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She walked straight out of that bathroom and out of that house. When the ambulance and the police showed up, they pronounced Isabella's mother deceased at the scene. There was no question of who had done this. The stepdad was there. He saw everything happen. Authorities knew the exact person they were looking for. The next morning, Isabella was found still in her bloody clothes from the night before, sleeping in the back seat of a car in a parking garage. She was arrested and taken into custody. While she was in custody, she took a series of tests. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Because of that, the argument that her defense team was going to try and take was to plead insanity. Isabella claimed to have been hearing voices in her head telling her to end the life of her mom. She said that she had been hearing the voices for years, and she said the voices told her that she had to unalive her mother because the voices said that it wasn't her mom. The voices said that it was someone named Cecilia, and that Isabella had to get rid of Cecilia in order to save the rest of the world. Her behavior in court is what really made this case blow up on social media because she seemed so cold. She was smiling, making weird faces, making eye contact with the cameras. It was weird. In the end, Isabella was found not guilty by reason of insanity. She was taken to the Colorado Mental Health Institute, where she remains to this day. Isabella has since then said that she regrets what she did, that she doesn't know who she was when she did that. She has stated, quote, "I'm not mentally ill anymore. I'm not a danger to myself or others." She wants to be free, to rejoin society again, to have a chance at normal life. Who knows if that will happen? The last update that I could find was of 2023, when a judge ruled that she would be allowed to be let out for therapy and certain other activities, but she was required to wear a GPS tracker. Okay, so here's my opinion on this. I think that insanity is real. I do think that someone could be so insane that they could not realize what they were doing. But at the same time, knowing that someone could be in society next to you at the grocery store and that person has been capable of ending the life of another human being in a really brutal way, and now they're just let out into society again. I don't know, like, I think that people can change, but I don't know. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. I'm in a good mood because the sun is out and I swear I have not seen the sun in like 3 weeks. And I will continue to say this. We don't know what's going to happen with TikTok, but if it does get banned, I will start posting these videos on my Instagram. So go make sure that you're following me on Instagram. The link is in my bio. I love you so much and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
She left a luxury hotel at 4 a.m., leaving behind her passport, her luggage, her purse, and even a 3-year-old son waiting for her back home. But she never came back. What happened to Alicia Hannon? Alicia Hannon was 24 years old and living in Miami Beach, Florida when she disappeared in January 2002. She was born in India and traveling on a New Zealand passport, and she was self-employed, traveling between Miami and Los Angeles a lot. She was the mother of a son who meant the world to her, and people would describe her as sweet and intelligent. By the early 2000s, her life became increasingly complicated. She was struggling with illicit substance use and was reportedly working as an escort. And her mother would say in interviews that she was telling people that she had been invited to Jeffrey Epstein's private island. But she wanted to leave this life behind and move on and just be with her son. Alicia had recently ended an on-again, off-again relationship with a Florida attorney that she was dating, and she had flown out to New Zealand with her son. She left her son there with her mom, and she was going back to Miami just to finish tying up a few loose ends. But a few days before her disappearance, she had actually contacted the police about this boyfriend. On January 1st, 2002, officers responded after an argument broke out between this boyfriend and Alicia, and she says that he pushed her to the floor and punched her in the mouth, causing her gums to bleed and loosening several teeth. He was arrested and charged with battery. This was not the first time, though. In July of 2001, he had also been charged after Alicia accused him of dragging both her and her young son out of the apartment, but this case was eventually dropped. Alicia had been summoned to appear in court as a witness to this battery charge, but before this could happen, she just disappeared. On January 6, 2002, she was staying at the Shore Club, which is a hotel in South Miami Beach, and around 4 a.m., she left to go get something to eat, but never came back. When investigators checked her hotel room, nearly everything she had was in the room, and if she intended to travel, she would have needed this stuff. Her passport, her luggage, her purse, her ID, her credit cards, and there was no activity on her bank accounts after that day. As time passed with no contact, investigators started to believe that foul play was likely involved. Her former boyfriend actually would be disbarred from practicing law after being convicted in an unrelated grand theft auto case. He has never been publicly named, and nobody has ever been arrested in connection with her disappearance. As of August 2026, Alicia Hannon remains missing. Her son is now an adult and fights alongside her mother in finding out what the heck happened after she walked outside of that hotel, because somebody knows something. If you or anybody you know has any information regarding the disappearance of Alicia Hannon, you can contact the Miami Beach Police Department. Thank you for listening to Alicia's story. Be sure to follow for more true crime, and if you have any case recommendations, feel free to comment, directly message me, or fill out the suggest a case form in my link tree in my bio.
What happens when the news presenter becomes the news story? She vanished on her way to work, and what police found right next to her car was absolutely terrifying. Let's take a look at one of America's most haunting cold cases. It was the 27th of June, 1995. Jodi Huisentruit was a talented girl destined for success. The 27-year-old was beautiful, talented, and unreal at sports, actually. She worked for local news station KIMT and used to have to be up basically in the middle of the night to present the morning show. The day prior to her disappearance, Jodi had spent the day at the Mason City Chamber of Commerce golf tournament and dinner. She'd been sociable, chatty, nobody had any reason to think that anything was off. Interestingly, 2 witnesses did come forward later to say that she'd been chatting with them and had told them how she was going to have to change her number because of nuisance phone calls. She ate her food, then left the country club just before 8 p.m. and made a call to her friend on her way home and seemed to be absolutely fine. So now we come to the morning where everything changed. Jodi's colleague and producer Amy Coons noticed Jodi was late for work that day. She just hadn't shown up. But this was something that had actually happened before, so Amy decided to just give her a quick call and just prompt her and get her up. She rang her at 4:10 a.m. and Jody answered the phone and confirmed that she had overslept. She seemed a bit concerned, but she said she'd be there ASAP. She did only live about a mile away from the news station studio, and it's not like there would be traffic at that time in the morning, so she was confident she could get there. But time started ticking on and Jody just still didn't show up. Amy rang her again, but this time it went to answer phone. Amy had to make the decision to just do the news in place of Jody that morning, but when the show ended and Jody still wasn't there, they rang police. Just after 7 a.m, police showed up at the apartment and found some terrifying evidence. Now, I go into a full deep dive of this case and all the evidence found at the scene on my podcast, The Bourne Investigation, but for a summary, here are the key bits. Jody's red car was in the car park and next to it was her hairdryer, earrings and high-heeled shoes. Her hairspray was also on the ground and her bent car key. Now this obviously indicated a struggle had taken place, and disturbingly there were even drag marks from the vehicle. The race was obviously on to try and find the missing news anchor before it was too late. Now, as I said, this is a disturbing cold case, so we don't actually know who took Jody that morning, but there are a few very suspicious characters in the local area. This includes John Van Cise, one of Jody's long-term friends. He was recently divorced and he was a lot older than Jody, I believe over 20 years older. He told police he may have been the last person to see Jody, which I just felt was suspicious off the bat. He admitted to being with her that night when she popped round to watch a video with him. He actually showed up at the apartment while police were searching there and was very keen to chat on the TV. He also was strangely talking about her in interviews in the past tense and had to be kind of pulled up on this. But some people say that John was just targeted unfairly because he was a male friend of hers. There's loads of information on John that, like I said, I deep dive into in the podcast. There's another person of interest as well, Tony Jackson, a local S offender. I take a look into the mysterious circumstances and the mysterious people in this case, all on the full episode.
Celeste was reported missing at just 13. Over a year later, her dismembered remains were found in the trunk of a singer's car. When Celeste Rivas Hernandez disappeared from her home in Lake Elsinore, California in April of 2024, she was just a 7th grader. At first, she was labeled as a runaway, and like many cases like that, the urgency faded into the background. But behind the scenes, something wasn't sitting right. Investigators now believe Celeste may have still been alive nearly a year later in April of 2025. And that single detail shifts the entire timeline because it suggests that for months, Celeste didn't simply vanish. She was somewhere and someone knew exactly where she was. Then, on September 8th, 2025, everything changed. Her remains were discovered in a Hollywood tow yard inside the front trunk of a Tesla registered to an alt-pop singer named David. A discovery that instantly turned the missing persons case into something far darker. What investigators found wasn't just shocking, it was deeply unsettling. An autopsy ruled her death a homicide caused by multiple penetrating injuries. There was evidence of dismemberment, and toxicology reports revealed in her system. And one detail, small but haunting, stood out to many. A tattoo on her ring finger that read, "Shh." One that matched one on David himself. But as disturbing as the physical evidence is, prosecutors say that's only half of the picture. According to them, the case is built on a combination of physical, forensic, and digital evidence, including data pulled from David's devices and iCloud account, reportedly totaling 40 terabytes. In court, they describe uncovering a significant amount of child along with other incriminating evidence. And in their view, there was definitely a motive. Prosecutors believe Celeste was killed to prevent her from reporting crimes. David Burke, now 21, has been charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and mutilation of human remains. But despite the weight of those allegations and the evidence they presented so far, he's pleaded not guilty, maintaining that he had no involvement in her death. And for many people watching the case unfold, they begin to wonder if his music was telling the truth the whole time. Lyrics that once felt random now feel eerie and dangerously close to the singer's reality. Right now, this case is still ongoing, and we're still in a preliminary hearing stage, so there's plenty more to go to really understanding what led to the murder of Celeste. Would you guys want me to keep updating about this case? If so, leave it down in the comments below.
This guy hops on a train and ends the life of this young woman in cold blood for no reason. So it all starts with this girl named Irina Zaruska, and she's 23 years old, originally from Ukraine, but she actually fled her country because of the war going on, and so she came to the United States hoping for a safer, better life. And things were actually looking pretty good for her. She had gotten a job at a local pizzeria. She was working really hard, building a future. And then one night, August 22nd, she finishes her shift and she heads home per usual. She gets on a train filled with passengers. I mean, it's just a regular night, and so she finds a seat, she sits down, probably like she's done 100 times before. But right behind her is a very, very dangerous man in a red hoodie. That is 27-year-old DeCarlos Brown. He's apparently homeless, but his past is actually terrifying. He once spent 5 years in prison for armed robbery, and then a couple months after he got out, he was arrested again for assaulting his own sister. So in total, he's been arrested 14 times, which I didn't even know was possible, but here he is on this train, which is even more insane because he isn't even supposed to be there. The man doesn't have a ticket. But obviously Irina doesn't know any of this. She just sits down, pops her AirPods in, and keeps to herself. For the next 4 minutes, nothing happens. It's a pretty normal, quiet train ride. And then out of nowhere, DeCarlos stands up. He pulls out a pocket knife from his hoodie and just starts stabbing her in the neck over and over. I mean, it happened so fast that Irina didn't even get a chance to scream. She quickly grabs her neck. She looks up at this man because she doesn't even know what he just did to her, and her blood is just spilling on the floor and she doesn't even realize it. And in the video, which truly broke me, you can see her face. She's just looking around for anybody to help her, but all the passengers just ignored her and tried to get away from that chaos. So with no one helping her, Irina just sat there with her hands over her mouth, completely in shock, and she's just crying. Like, that is so heartbreaking, and I honestly wonder if in that moment she knew it was over. And soon enough, she just falls to the ground right there and bleeds out for the next 93 seconds. And what infuriates me the most isn't just that people didn't help her, it's also the fact that they recorded her while she passed away. Like, that's the world we're living in now. And while all of this is happening, while she is still on the floor, DeCarlos just paces back and forth. He even takes off his hoodie, like he is so detached from what he just did. Just 2 minutes later, the train stops, he steps off of the platform, and eventually police find him, they arrest him, and he is charged with first-degree unaliving. But my question is, will he be released again? Because why is a man like that allowed to be free in the first place? Because now Irina's life, a life that she fought so hard to get, is over. It is a very sensitive time in America right now. I honestly don't know what else to say except I love you. Please be safe. Protect yourself. Group hug.
They sadistically SA'd and tortured children and animals inside an underground bunker. 8 sick people decided to run an underground bunker where they would charge people to come in and SA and torture children and animals. The most horrific and sadistic things took place within the walls of this bunker. Children were tied to beds, chairs, and a metal pole to prevent them from moving or escaping. The suspects forced the children to wear electric shock collars so they could constantly shock the children whenever they wanted to. The kids were also whipped profusely with leather belts while being assaulted. The children were heavily sedated with chemical ecstasy. The children would also be tortured and SA'd. Some of these children in the bunker were as young as 2 to 3 years old. The children were laughed at and humiliated while being SA'd. Videos and photos of these children being SA'd were sold online. The animals inside the bunker were subjected to severe physical abuse and torture alongside the children. The animals would also be SA'd. Court documents state that Timothy St. John SA'd a dog inside the bunker. None of the 8 suspects have been sentenced yet, due to the fact that the legal process is still ongoing. Law enforcement is working on identifying the network of 15 to 20 people who were paying for services at this bunker. This is honestly just a whole different kind of evil. But what do you guys think about this case?
She adopted this baby just so that she could torture her and take her life. Layla Marie Daniel was born on July 18th of 2013 to her parents Tessa and Anthony, and she also had an older sister named Millie, and they lived together in Hampton, Georgia. Her mother Tessa was known to be neglectful, and oftentimes she would leave the 2 girls unsupervised. Those 2 young girls were moved from house to house, living with other family members while their mother Tessa was out getting substances. By January of 2015, Tessa was arrested because of those substances and spent 3 months in jail. By April of 2015, Layla and Millie were removed from their mother's care and they were placed into foster care. When Tessa was a child, she was in the foster care system herself, and she was briefly living with a girl named Jennifer Rosenbaum. Jennifer, who was a 3rd-year law student, was interning at the juvenile court, and that's how she found out that Tessa's 2 daughters were taken away from her and put into the foster system. Jennifer talks to Tessa's grandmother just to find out what had happened, and this is when she decides she wants to step in and help those girls out. Patricia Lambert, who was a foster mother for over 10 years, expressed to the Department of Child and Family Services that she was concerned that the Rosenbaums weren't watching the girls closely enough. Patricia told the Department of Child and Family Services that she found a bruise on Layla's leg, and when she asked Jennifer about it, Jennifer said that she got that bruise because she had gotten into a fight with another little girl at her daycare. As the process continued, Layla showed up with more bruises, but it was never reported because they didn't seem that serious. By October 19th of 2015, Layla had broke her leg and she was taken to an urgent care, and Jennifer told the staff that she broke her leg because she fell at her Nana's house as well as her gymnastics class. Samantha White, who was the caseworker, followed up with doctors to talk to them, and they basically said that Layla was going to be okay, and they believed the story that she broke her leg at gymnastics. However, Samantha did not follow up with the gymnastics gym to confirm that this was true. Samantha also didn't write an incident report for this injury, and every caseworker is required to do so. By November 2nd, Samantha paid a visit to the Rosenbaums, and that's when she noticed that Millie had a bruise on her face. Samantha wrote in her report it was a small bruise under her eye, and Jennifer explains that Millie was in the bathroom and Jennifer went to the other room to grab her phone, and when she had came back, Millie had hit her head on the faucet. When caseworkers are doing these home visits, they're supposed to undress the child to see if there are any signs of abuse, but Layla was asleep in her bed, so all she did was take off the covers a little bit, take a quick look, because Jennifer had told her that she was having a hard time falling asleep and she didn't really want her to bother her now that she was asleep. On November 17th of 2015, Jennifer would call 911 to report that Layla was unresponsive. She claimed that Layla choked on a piece of chicken, so she did the Heimlich. Then she started to do CPR and she successfully took out the chicken out of her throat, but that Layla wasn't getting any better. Once first responders arrived, they noticed that Layla had a bunch of other injuries that wouldn't be caused by doing CPR. First responders noticed bruising on her face, neck, back, abdomen, pelvis, wrists, and legs, and tried everything they could to try and save her life, but unfortunately on November 17th, she was pronounced dead. An autopsy was done on Layla's body, and it revealed that she had numerous bruises all the way from her head down to her legs, and she had the most prominent bruise on her back. In addition to that, Layla also had several broken ribs on the posterior side of her rib cage, not like in the front like you would expect from doing CPR. They also found several injuries to her internal organs, and her pancreas had burst so badly that it was split in half. The medical examiner revealed that there was no food in her system which could have caused the choking, and ultimately the cause of her death was blunt force trauma to her abdomen. And not only Layla, but Millie as well had extensive bruising on her hips, head, back, and arms. So by December 4th, both Jennifer and her husband Joseph were arrested. Even Millie testified in court that Jennifer and Joseph would yell at them loudly whenever they were mad. She claims that they would get hit and kicked for things like falling asleep in the car or not getting dressed fast enough. Millie also talked about the night that Millie had died, and she stated that after she was done with dinner, she went upstairs to watch Paw Patrol, and that Jennifer was at the bottom of the stairs and told her to come down, and when she went down, she saw that Layla was asleep. Immediately, she went into the car with Jennifer to go to the hospital, and that was the night that Layla had died. Jennifer and Joseph only had the girls for a few months until Layla was killed. Jennifer was given a life sentence plus 40 years, Joseph was given a 30-year sentence, and Millie is now in the care of an adoptive mother who loves and cares for her.
Imagine your roller coaster cart smashes head on into another one, and what would be later described in court as being like a 90-mile-an-hour car crash. That is exactly what happened on the Smiler at Alton Towers on the 2nd of June 2015. There were 16 people trapped high above the ground. 2 young women had to have their legs amputated. The main question that hangs over this case though is, was this just a random freak accident, or was this a disaster that was brewing from the start? This is the story of the Alton Towers Smiler crash. The Smiler originally opened in 2013 at Alton Towers. It actually cost £18 million to build, and the idea was sold as the world's first 14-loop roller coaster. This roller coaster was hyped for ages, and this was going to break records. The top speeds were about 52 miles an hour, the drop was 30 metres high. The ride time though was only 2.5 minutes, and the theme of the ride was almost like a psychological thriller. It was to control your mind, it had endless smiling faces, and the idea that the ride would essentially possess you. It was hyped so much, but right from the very start, things with the Smiler were starting to go a little bit wrong. Even before the public ever rode the Smiler, there was delays. There was flooding during construction and a PR press night where the train on the roller coaster stalled and people had to be evacuated. The official opening was then pushed back by 2 weeks once again. Even when the ride had just came out, there was problems at the very start. For example, early on the trains valleyed, which essentially means they got stuck in the dips of the roller coaster during testing. In July of 2013, a bolt or a metal bar fell from the track. It left a visible gap and 48 people had to be rescued from the ride that day. After this incident, the ride actually closed for several days after. Days later, after that exact incident, cracks were appearing around the base of a support on the roller coaster. In November of 2013 as well, guide wheels detached on the vertical lift and flew into the front row, hitting 4 people. Again, this caused another multi-day closure to the Smiler. Now, I know absolutely nothing about roller coasters. I am absolutely terrified of roller coasters. I think I went on a couple in Blackpool when I was younger. However, I never went on any of the bigger ones because, quite frankly, they just terrified me. While this was going on though, the people that did know about roller coasters, the people in the industry, were already talking amongst themselves, saying that the track was potentially under too much stress and too much pressure. The Smiler had already gained a reputation for just being a bit unreliable, and in the year that it first opened, it spent quite a lot of time closed because of all of the various issues that I told you about. Then we have the day of the crash, the 2nd of June 2015. If you have seen the footage from this day, I remember seeing it on the news of just the people absolutely screaming and the way the cart hit. It honestly sends shivers down my spine and it makes me feel sick. It's important to note too that this was a very windy afternoon. The gusts were reported up to 46 miles an hour and the Smiler's manufacturer limit was between 33 and 34. Other rides in the park were already being shut down and closed for the day because it was just too windy. My question now here is, why wasn't the Smiler closed? Because it was already running above the manufacturer's wind guidelines. People in the queue had been waiting for a while to get on this ride. At one point, they had actually got on the ride and been taken back off because of a technical fault. So an empty test train was sent out. It stalled in a low section of the track, essentially like a dip. Everyone else boarded the roller coaster, but the ride's safety block system actually done its job perfectly. It stopped that train full of the passengers on the hill so that 2 trains couldn't occupy the same section of the track. However, it was at this point that a grave error was made. The engineers overrode the system. I don't understand how they didn't know where that empty cart was on the track. Surely if you're sending out a test car, the point in that test car would be to send it round until it came back, not just leaving it there until the next car goes out. It just makes no sense to me. Engineers thought this was a false alarm and they couldn't see the empty stalled train. There was actually no clear procedure that forced them to physically confirm that the track was clear before they reset it. The loaded train with the passengers on it was then released from where it was stopped. Only 26 seconds later, it smashed into that stationary carriage. The kinetic energy from this was later compared in court to a 1.5-ton car hitting something at 90 miles an hour. I cannot even imagine the fear that those victims felt, especially in the front row, as they came up to that empty car and saw that it wasn't moving. It makes my chest feel tight. The passengers were left hanging in the air at a steep angle. It took the emergency services 4 to 5 hours to get everyone down. Even scaffolding had to be built. There was air ambulances. People were screaming. If you have seen the footage of this, I'm not going to put it in this video. It's not too graphic. I just don't want to post that with all of the screaming in the background because it's probably these people's most traumatic times of their life, but it is on YouTube and it is pretty easy to find online. One of the victims actually had to get blood transfusions as she was still sitting in the car, and that saved her life. The whole scene was just complete and utter chaos. I cannot think about it. 16 people were injured in the crash that day, but the 4 people in the front row suffered the absolute worst of it. They were Leah Washington, aged 17. She was on a date with her boyfriend Joe. Her left leg was crushed and it had to get amputated above the knee. She spent 5 days in an intensive care ward and then 8 weeks in hospital. Then we have the other girl. These 2 girls, bearing in mind, were sitting in the 2 middle seats of the front car. Next victim, a girl called Vicky, who was aged 19 from Lancashire. Her right leg had to be amputated below the knee after multiple operations failed to save it. Now, the 2 girls had the worst injuries, and that is because they were sitting in the 2 middle seats of the front carriage. I will put a picture on screen of what the carriage looks like. The footwell is literally crushed to mere centimetres. Because they were in the middle and it got the biggest brunt of the hit, that is why their injuries were so severe. We then have Joe, Leah's boyfriend. He had both his kneecaps shattered and he had damage to his hands and his fingers. It was actually said that at one point his finger was near enough hanging off. I'm pretty sure in one of the interviews he actually stated that if he wanted to, he could have pulled it off. We then have another victim, Daniel, aged 27. He had a collapsed lung and serious lower leg injuries. Candaman Chahan, aged 49, also suffered from serious internal injuries. Others had lesser injuries but were still significant injuries. But also, I'm thinking about everybody else on this card as well. Regardless if you weren't injured or if you were injured, I think the trauma from being trapped on that and everything that was going on around you would just be horrific in itself. I know personally that even if I wasn't injured, I would struggle to sleep at night just from what I had witnessed. An investigation obviously began into why this crash happened, and Alton Towers remained completely closed while that investigation began. The Smiler stayed shut for the whole rest of 2015. It only reopened in March of 2016 after modifications to the track, train and the operating procedures. I think they got a fright when this happened, to be honest. I think a lot of work would probably have to have went into this for it to even be considered opening again. I know the victims have said in some interviews that they never wanted to see that roller coaster ever open ever again. However, they knew it was inevitable and they knew it was going to happen. Merlin Attraction Operations, the company that runs the park, initially said that the crash was caused by human error. The health and safety executive and the courts disagreed with this decision. Merlin Attractions pleaded guilty to health and safety breaches, and in September of 2016 they were fined a whopping £5 million. The judge was brutal in this case though. They said, quote, "This was a needless and avoidable accident and quote, a catastrophic failure in risk assessments of work. Safety procedures were woefully inadequate and the root problem wasn't one person pressing that one button. It was an absence of a proper system that made a whole chain of mistakes possible." Compensation was obviously paid to the victims. However, the damage had pretty much been done to Alton Towers at this point. Visitor numbers dropped, jobs were cut, the park's reputation as being a safe place to go with family or friends or as a couple, that reputation took a serious hit. When we look at the full picture of this though, there was repeated mechanical and structural issues on the Smiler from day one. It should never have been operating in high winds against the manufacturer's guidance. The wind was so much higher than what they had advised. I don't understand why this ride was still running. In the test train being added without communication between the people operating the ride, and then the safety system that actually did work perfectly, it stopped the ride, but then there was the workers who overrid it without the policy of checking it first. The computer in this case actually done its job, and the block stopped the train exactly where it was supposed to. The failure was down to the organisation. It was down to the people who didn't communicate properly. The investigators in this case and the judge both concluded that this crash was foreseeable. So was the Smiler crash a disaster waiting to happen? I would say it was. All of the issues that the ride had previously, combined with the procedures that were in place with the workers, that just created a perfect condition for something to go wrong. But this should be a safe place for people to go. It should be looked after meticulously. People should be communicating properly. This was a completely avoidable event that was not avoided. As you all will probably know, the Smiler still runs today after all the changes that were made after the crash, but for the victims, the psychological and the physical scars still remain and will remain with them for the rest of their life. Theme parks sell adrenaline rushes, they sell thrills. However, the deal is that their systems are supposed to keep you safe. They are supposed to keep you safe while having a good time, and on that June afternoon of 2015, those systems and the park as a whole completely failed. If you've ever read the Smiler, please comment down below, let me know, how did you find it, or do you just remember this happening at the time? This has definitely made me think twice of even ever trying a small roller coaster ever again. If you have any other case suggestions, please feel free to let me know down below. Look after yourself, and I will see you in the next one.
Get ready with me while I tell you about how an Ancestry DNA kit is putting my grandma in prison. So in case you couldn't tell, I've never made a video like this before. I've already tried to record this a couple times, and I keep stumbling over my words. This video might take a few minutes to get through because it is quite a long story, and I don't want to split it up into separate fucking parts like everybody does. So just bear with me. So I'm going to start with a little bit of the backstory. So I've never met my grandmother. I didn't even know her name until I was like 14 or 15 years old. And for reasons that are not my business to tell, when my mother's ready to tell that story, then that's on her. But I've never met my grandmother. So just keep that in mind. The other little part of the backstory that I feel like people should know is that this case was very popular in the town that I grew up in, because it was so fucked up. It was the Baby Garnet case, and I know a lot of people are curious. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about what the fuck happened, especially in my hometown. So I'm here to start talking about it. Obviously I can't talk about everything, but I can tell you my story. Let's get into it. So go back about 2 years ago, I watched my best friend get an Ancestry DNA kit for Christmas, and I thought it was dope. I was like, I need one of those. I want to see all the cool shit that she's seeing right now, so I bought one. It's literally, you spit in a fucking tube, you swab your mouth, you send it in, and they give you your ancestry results. It's actually really fucking cool. And I had a blast doing it. Little did I know. So I sent it in, got my results back. Everything was cool and fine. So then about a year later, I'm at work, and I get a phone call, and it's a fucking detective from the Michigan State Police out of St. Ignace. And I was like, excuse me. I was like, what the fuck did I do? So I start freaking out. I was like, okay, I'm either about to really go to jail or somebody is dead. So I start freaking out. And he was like, I just want to let you know that I reopened a cold case from like 25 years ago. And he was like, and your DNA is a direct match to the victim of this case. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, what case? And he was like, you've heard of the Baby Garnet case, right? And I was like, I was like, you're joking, right? And he was like, no. He was like, I know that it's shocking. He was like, and I know that it's, you know, a weekday at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. and I kind of just sprung this on you. He was like, but we've been investigating and your DNA matches. And I was like, okay. So I start talking to this dude, and he like proceeds to tell me that he wants to connect me with this lady from Chicago. He said that she like runs this worldwide database, and he wants me to talk to her so she can upload my DNA into this worldwide database to like broaden the search, I guess. So I okayed it, and he told me that he would give her my number and she'd call me after I got off work. So I get home from work, and I'm telling my mom about this call. I was like, listen, like, this is fucked up. Like, listen to this. And she was like, I wouldn't, like, listen to that. She was like, Papa just got a phone call saying that Uncle Marcus is dead, and that they needed, like, his social security number or something like that to confirm that it was, like, he was his father. And he was not dead. Like, it was a fucking scam, but freaked my grandpa out. And so my mom was like, don't, like, it could be a scam, you know? So this lady calls me, and I'm on the phone with her, and she's like, I just need, like, your permission. And I was like, you have my permission, girl. I was like, whatever you need me to do, like, I'll do it. And she was like, okay, I need your password. And I was like, who the fuck's gonna ask me for my password that's not a scammer, you know? And so I hung up the fucking phone. So like a week later, I get another phone call from my mom. And she was like, hey, she was like, you need to come home right now. And I was like, I'm at work. I can't just leave. And she was like, yeah, you can. She's like, it's an emergency. Like, you need to come home right now. So I was like, all right, whatever. So thank God my manager was understanding. She ended up letting me leave. And it was just crazy. I ended up getting home, and one of my cousins were there. And she was like, you know that phone call you got? And I was like, how the fuck do you know about that? And she was like, because of there was state police at my door this morning. And I was like, okay. She was like, it's not a scam. Like, I've been in contact with them all morning. Like, you really do need to call that lady back, because they need your DNA. Okay. So I called her back. We uploaded my DNA into this worldwide database, and it comes back as a distant relative. So they were like, are we able to speak with your mom? And I was like, actually, she's sitting right here. So they spoke with my mother. They asked for her permission to take her DNA. So they ended up meeting up with her the next day, taking her DNA, and ended up obviously running it through the same database that they ran mine through, and ended up finding out that it's not a distant relative to my mom, but a direct relative. And the only other people that it could have been was my mom's mother. They kind of started doing their own investigating and figured out that that's who it was. So we were mind blown. Mind you, I've never met this woman before. She is literally the person that they've been looking for 25 years. And it's all because of a fucking Ancestry DNA kit. So yeah, everything kind of unfolded from there. I'm not really allowed to talk about anything that has happened outside of that right now. But obviously it's going to come out. Shit has already been in the news, and I know you bitches have seen it because I've seen your fucking comments. So yeah, to all the nosy bitches that wanted to know, here's the tea. Now shut the fuck up.